Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. Your hosts, Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman, tackle today's biggest workplace challenges with practical, straight talk solutions. In this episode, they discuss Sara Braun's Fortune article. Gen Z and boomers are driving a leadership vacuum that's threatening productivity and morale at work. With only 21% of managers engaged, according to Gallup, we're facing a leadership crisis. How do you develop leaders when Gen Z rejects the corner office? How do you bridge the gap when middle management is disappearing? And how do you engage a workforce that's quietly quitting? They'll explore why younger generations prioritize passion over promotion, how the elimination of middle management is forcing senior executives to manage frontline employees they're not equipped to lead, and why traditional career advancement has become extinct in a world where side gigs matter more than climbing the corporate ladder. Tim and Andreas break it down and show you how to stop doing stupid stuff with your leadership development. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast with my good friend and co-host, Tim Keefe. Cellmate, I should lead with that first, right? That has that biggest weighting, cellmate. And we're live. We're
Yeah.
live from Alcatraz, right? It's in your neighborhood. No, I'm kidding. So pretty good topic today. What's the article we're going to be talking about, Tim?
Yeah, so this is just published yesterday by Sara Braun in Fortune. And the title is Gen Z and Boomers are driving a leadership vacuum that's threatening productivity and morale at work. And what I not liked about the article, I mean, the article calls out a huge problem, but I think what was interesting to me is this, it continues to echo some of the things that we've been talking about and talking to our clients about, which is coaching and engagement are critical things. They're not sidebars to productivity or outcomes. They are critical to the effectiveness of a business getting things done. Even I know everybody's holding out the premise that, well, in the future, we're not going to have employees. It's all going to be AI bots. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's happening, and it may happen, but I don't think it's happening anywhere near as fast or effectively as people seem to think. So I know that was a long intro, can't help myself, but let's just kind of like dive in, Mr.
Yeah.
Andreas, sir.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good premise, and I would say largely too, evidence speaks kind of volumes on what I look at from an objective standpoint. One, the Gallup survey came out, and global engagement was at what, 21%?
For
So,
managers, yeah, 21% for managers, and I think 30% overall for non-management.
so one out of five people. It's pretty, pretty bad. But if you go look at the Gallup report's really good. If you go look at it, it has a breakout around gender, age, and job level too. So you can start connecting the dots around where do you see trends of manager disengagement, individual contributor disengagement, and then the age range. And that's kind of what the article, and Sara does a really good job of highlighting this, gets into where is the disparity kind of coming from? Where is it originating from? And if you look at the hierarchies of a lot of, larger organizations, you have what we call baby boomers in there, right? That are the executives kind of calling the shots, and they manage through, quite literally decades of different varying circumstances, right? That were not easy to get through. And so, how do they take that knowledge now that there's a big variation of variables, environmental variables, we call them, that the workplace is facing today that are uniquely being faced today? And what I mean by uniquely is even as much as, the baby boomer generation and even the Gen Z generation kind of went through, we've never seen the generational makeup in the workforce that we're seeing today. You have millennials, you've got Gen Z, you obviously we went through COVID and work from home, and now there's still this hybrid model that's the product of that. And so there's so many different dynamics that are being faced today. Yet you're not getting, like simply put, you're not getting more baby boomers introduced into the workforce or Gen Xers introduced to the workforce. Our populations are only going to diminish, and millennials and Gen Zs are going to take over. So as stewards of the future in the business, like what are we doing to prepare these guys to be the leaders of tomorrow? Because I got to be honest with you, I think we're kind of doing a crap job about it, given the
Well,
results that I'm seeing right now. What do you think?
and I think Sarah did a really interesting point in there in that you don't have these people who are pursuing the corner office. It's not like, first off, are people even wanting to be promoted into a supervisory role? And I think what we're seeing is if people are given a choice, they're saying, no, thanks. I'll be happy to sit here and do my job, and I'm an individual contributor. Oh, and I probably have a side gig going on because that's where my creative energy is. And
Yep.
so you don't have that people going out and, getting an MBA or getting an advanced degree with the idea that they're going to move into that people are plotting's not a good word, but planning their, the rise up the ladder that I think was common for me anyway, as a baby boomer, and probably even you saw in your own career. You went kind of, you maybe not even actively, but you thought about each role and you were a hard performer with the goal of the intent is that that would be rewarded with quote unquote with a promotion. Now that we're not necessarily seeing that, although Gen Xers were really bad. I wanted to get promoted every 6 months. That was, I think, a thing I saw a lot of. But as Sara points out, you have a lot of people who are just like, not interested, don't need the stress, right? Don't the extra money, whatever that might be, isn't worth the aggravation because I want to have a work-life balance. I want to be able to enjoy my vacations and not work on them. I want to be able to enjoy the weekend and not work on the weekend. And as she points out, where do people get their creativeness? How do they get to exercise that? The other thing too is as you step up in the management, and again, I'm going to make some generalizations based on my own experience, but people were kind of like, oh, I got more money, I got moved into a new role, my job is very much defined for me. Not a lot of creativity necessarily, and in many ways, not even necessarily valued, particularly at mid-level management. Your job was
Yeah.
to execute on other people's vision, not to have a vision of your own.
And create it and
Um,
execute it, which is a huge paradigm shift that I think we're experiencing today.
well,
But
like, yeah, I mean, as she points out, I thought it was a really good at the tail end of the article. It's like, how do you encourage people to be creative and own execution of something? But in a world where maybe there isn't a lot of creativity at middle management, but how do you enable that? And I think her thought was, how do you give people ownership of small areas so that they can start developing their own
yeah,
vision for that? Like give them the challenge rather than, and as you say all the time, and I think it's such a great thing, so often here's your checkbox of things you need to get done every month. And that becomes the goal, not the outcome. Like if somebody really said to you, your outcome is to drive improved NPS scores for your customers. And what I care about is you driving improved NPS scores. So how you get there, that there's flexibility in that model. But
yeah.
that's not the case in today's world, right? What you see is people are being told you have to do these things every month or whatever the period of time
I like
is.
that voice. I like that impression, by the way.
I'm trying to think who it was, but I won't put any names on it because thou shalt. Is that the I
Yeah.
am Batman?
But I think it's true though, and like, well, here's the good thing. First of all, if you go look at the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff universe, and the reason why I say universe, obviously we have the podcast you're listening to right now. We also have several books that are out on this subject, and we also have an academy that's launching on this on these subjects on how to address it creatively
Yes.
for
Yep.
Gen Z people and even baby boomers if you want to get in there and look at a more modernized way. But I think what's interesting, what you just said, is the middle management. Well, one, we're starting to see a lot of cost takeout and where that cost takeout is originating from organizations. And I won't name names here, but you'll look at news yourself. Middle management is getting gutted right now. And so what you're doing is creating this even wider spectrum from senior level executives now having to manage and be responsible for the development of frontline employees or individual contributors. And
Yeah.
they haven't been trained for that. They haven't done that in years. And so what's happening and what you were explaining, you have a lot of people flying under the radar. They're quiet quitting, so to say, right? So the
Hmm.
level of productivity that they're contributing, because they really don't believe in the mission, is like 50 or 60%. Hence the engagement figures that we shared at the beginning of the podcast. And so if you have someone who's really passionate about doing something, the role, and I think I was going to say this before too, kind of what you were explaining around like Gen Xers in my group coming up, we saw what we wanted to kind of do to get promoted some of us, the outcomes to be able to get there and justify it, right? But we were passionate about solving problems and solution engineering, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say a lot of that generation, and when I say that generation, I'm talking about baby boomers and Gen Xers, the job defined them. It wasn't because, oh, hey, this is my passion. This is why I'm getting into this field. It just so happened I'm settling, and now I
Right.
kind of like this, and now the job is reforming me for this to be my passion. And
Hmm.
now you have a huge, and this is the other side of the spectrum, you have a lot of Gen Z and millennials coming out saying, well, no, I want to do this and I want to be an individual contributor. And so that aspiration to be the corner office person, that's non-existent
Right.
or largely non-existent in the population. So you have to figure out how do you connect with them and engage with them and suffice to the things that are passionate for them and harness all of that energy back into the business to help your business and
Well,
your clients. That's like, look, it's not easy, but you got to figure it out. That's the problem that needs to be solved today. That's one of
well,
the problems.
and I think it's really fascinating. I was just in a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a large quick service restaurant chain, and they have thousands of stores. And they have a goal of saying we want to go out and hire people that are, ambitious, that are well educated, that have 4-year degrees in business, and they're going to go run a quick service restaurant, and you're like, I'm not so sure that somebody who's worked through college is saying that's where I want to put my job for the next several years, running a quick service restaurant with 25 or 30 employees, and all the fun that comes with that. I don't think that was their vision, and they're really, really struggling to even attract people into those jobs. And it's kind of like, yeah. And so, you think, and I think what's fascinating is, and I'm going to do a little bit of selling here, but even around with what we do, as Transform CX and Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, is this concept of we've got to get down, and leadership is not an academic study. Leadership is practical application of helping people overcome challenges and work together as a team. So,
Exactly.
and so I think with that is this idea of helping companies understand that middle management is not an expense layer. I know it's one of those things where people look at and you go, if any of you have ever watched the movie Office Space, there's a really funny scene where the two consultants are interviewing a middle manager and getting him to describe his job. And he's like, well, I bridged between the engineers and the customers. And the consultants are like, well, why can't the engineers talk directly to the customers? And again, it's for those of us who've been there, it's kind of a funny conversation because from the outside,
Yeah.
it sounds like what this guy's just handing things from one side to the other. The
Yep.
reality is it's not that simple. And getting people to align around a common definition of success and measuring that success, et cetera, is very hard. So I think where I come at the end of all of this is, hey, companies, if you're looking at longevity, if you're looking at how am I going to build my next generation of leadership, this is not going to happen through a paper exercise. I think it's going to take getting people involved in face to face. I know it almost sounds archaic, but standing up and saying, just put your head down and get the work done, which was what my generation was told, isn't going to work. People are going to have to say, why? What am I doing? What's the outcome? And who am I working with? And if I don't have a sense of teaming and I don't have a sense of clarity of vision, and if I'm not aligned with that vision, you're going to end up with quiet quitting. And worst case, and this is a future podcast, the whole concept of revenge quitting. So anyway,
No, I agree.
let me just land.
There's a lot of dots that connect after this though. And so if you're able to solve this problem right here, I think you're going to have a lot more options in the future to be successful as an organization, right? Speaking, you're going to have more options available. If you don't, you're going to continue to have turnover that's costing your business quite a significant amount of money, time, and effort. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot of stalwarts that have been around literally for a century or so, 100 companies that have been around for 100 plus years, they're not going to be around. Or they might get, likely what's going to happen is the brand will get bought and incorporated into a larger corporation that has figured
Yep.
this out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And, somebody will snap them up and probably end that brand, just disappear into somebody else's. But
Yep.
again, I think what we're getting back to is, people are important. people's goals and objectives and motivators are changing. And as an organization, are you changing with that? And just relying on thou shalt get it done, I don't think it's going to work anymore.
Nope. All you gotta do is look at the data. Like I always say, look at the data.
All right,
So
sir.
yeah,
As
good
always,
good chat and huge props to Sarah Braun. We'll make sure we tag her in the comments too so you can check out this article. It's really, really well written. There's a lot of great data points in here and suggestions to get you started, frankly. So big props to Sarah for the article.
yep, appreciate it, Sarah. If you get the chance to listen to us, and everybody else, thanks. Please subscribe. If you have comments, please let us know. We're always interested in what you have to say, and we're not going anywhere. We're continuing to drive this, as we like to say, one more thing: stop doing stupid stuff.
I don't think we're ever gonna run out of material. That's the great chat, Tim. Thanks everybody for listening, and we will talk again soon.
All right, thanks, everybody.